This is LairMedia.tv, and welcome to this edition of You Cannot Be Serious. And info@LairMedia.tv is our email. Now, welcome along, Una Walsh, to another edition.
Good evening. How are you, Pat?
I'm very well. How are you? Did you get a haircut?
No, not yet. I'm still putting me on.
Good evening, Mary Honan. How are you?
I'm good.
Good evening, Paul Sheehan. Welcome again.
How are you, Pat? How are you, everyone? By the way, just a very quick little thing there, Pat. By the way, I didn't get a haircut, but I got a lovely pint of Guinness.
Pat.
A bowl of us there. Good evening, Chris Price. Welcome again.
Good evening, everyone. Paul, did you pay €9 for the meal with the pint of Guinness?
I paid €9 and I got 3 pints of Guinness for it.
So there was no meal.
Oh.
That's a meal in itself.
Good evening, Tony Browne. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good evening, Brian HInchy.
Good evening, viewers, listeners, and fans, wherever you are.
And Stephen Collins. Nice to see you again.
Good evening, everybody.
And the blooms behind you. They look
Oh,
very
yes,
nice.
yeah. Black garden.
There's been a lot of talk in the media, certainly this morning on some of the channels, some of the radios over here. I don't know what way they're handing them over there, Una, but here in Ireland especially, there's conflicting reports whether we should go abroad or not go abroad, whether we should fly or not fly. The usual mistaken thing, whether we should do this or that and the other thing, and there's a myriad of opinions. But should we really go abroad on holidays? Because from Ireland, the traditional places we go are the Algarve in Spain, and they're the traditional places for Irish people to go on a sun holiday. Chris, will you be flying out now to the Algarve in a few weeks' time?
No, I'm going nowhere this year. We didn't plan to go anywhere this year, Pat, because the young lad had supposed to have his junior cert. So we were thinking we'll stay anyway, just beforehand. And we actually were lucky. We had a break in February during the half term for a week in the Malaga area in Spain. So no, we're going to have a little bit of a staycation. We have a couple. I'm off work in the next 2 weeks, so we're going down to Waterford for a few days. And then we're going to Tullamore because with myself and young lad are doing a bit of a golfing trip around the country for a few different courses to get him used to it. So we're going to stay.
You're not going to Cork, you mean?
No, we're bypassing Cork. Been there too many times. Too many times.
His passport is out of date.
Yeah, the visa needs to be expired. The visa's expired, Paul. That's fair. But no, we've decided basically to stay at home. We've got decent deals for what we want. And we're getting some work done to the house as well. And we just felt that it's just a little bit too risky at the moment. There seems to be over the last week or so a little bit of, I wouldn't call it a spike, but a little bit of a upturn in the curve, which is a little bit troublesome. Now I know we in Clare are extremely lucky. There's been no cases in the last 19 days, so we're doing grand, but we can't see what happens everywhere else. And normally the places we go would be close to where the epicenter was in February, March. So we thought, you know what, better be safe than sorry. Not that it's just, you just don't know. You just don't know where you're going to go, who you're going to meet with. Something can happen. And, it's just, we didn't want anything to do that. And we just think, we were lucky enough with the deals that we got. Now, I do hear there's been some gouging by some places because with an absence of American tourists, British tourists, that, some places are thinking, let's see if we can get what we can from the locals and if they have that kind of thing. So, we're going to give people in Ireland the benefit of the doubt. We're lucky in what we've got so far. So we're just going to try and enjoy it for the next 2 weeks.
And Stephen, you won't be jetting off to the Algarve, will you?
No, we won't be going anywhere this year, Pat. Definitely not. It's way too dangerous, I think, because the pandemic still hasn't even known. It's still nowhere. Excuse me. It's still nowhere near finished yet. So no, we wouldn't chance it, especially with our underlying medical conditions as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And as well, I don't think to be like a normal holiday anyway, because you'd have to wear a mask. You'd have to abide by all the stringent methods that they have over there. So I don't think you'd enjoy it as much.
And Una, will you be staying put?
I think like everybody else in the panel, I'll be staying put. I will indeed. As Stephen just said, it's not gone. There's a pandemic out there. We could, what's that word? Asymptomatic. You don't know, that word's a scary word. People can be asymptomatic and you don't know. So no, I'll be staying put, even though they're opening the staycations. I mean, they're all going
She's gone.
Gone, Nuala.
Una, your voice is gone.
Your sound. Anyway, Mary, you won't be jetting off anywhere, will you?
No, I'm not planning for much the same as much the same, I suppose, as Chris. I'd be I'd be staying at home, but I'd be giving them the benefit of the doubt. I fear that people and we're great in this country for finding any excuse to try and rise the price of things. I mean, I was looking at the news tonight, and the amount of people talking about how fantastic it is to be dining out in the fresh air. And I'm thinking, one drop of rain and there'll be no dining out in the fresh air. There's a handful of people inside in a shop. What's the purpose of having restaurants and paying rent for a restaurant if half your guests are sitting outside on the street in the rain? That's all well and good in countries like Spain or Portugal, where you're guaranteed at least some sunshine, but in this country you're guaranteed nothing. So I don't know. I won't be going abroad. I usually go to France every year. That was cancelled this year. It might be changed and it might be rescheduled. So if it is, then I will go to France.
So, Paul, I take it you've cancelled the trip to Cuba, have you?
Well, I certainly can't. I would have said this time of the year, just thinking to myself, this would normally now when I'd head to things like, we said, the Armed Forces Day, maybe in Belfast or over to Glasgow, or maybe down to London, or the Senate happened, things of that nature. This year, that's out. Apart from the fact that my good lady hadn't been well for some time, so I'm under that extra little caution in the back of my head. Not so much of me, but where I go, the chances of what I could bring. If you know what I mean, bring back with me. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's that extra little caution in my mind in terms of going anywhere.
Yeah.
I come back to what Mary said there about the weather. I mean, look, if you can get the weather right in Ireland, it's probably one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Sadly, as Mary rightly said, it's a very difficult country to plan anything. So for the moment, I'm just going to go hold tight. Someone mentioned there earlier, and it was something that I picked up on the news earlier on this afternoon as well. A number of countries, a number of regions throughout the world are going into a second lockdown.
That's right,
yeah. So we're very, very far from the end of this issue, and I would not at all be surprised to see spikes again here in Ireland very quickly. I'd be surprised if we didn't.
So, Tony, you won't be heading off to Bangkok, no?
No. Not going anywhere. Haven't been away in a while.
Haven't you?
Any of your family planning on going abroad?
I don't know yet. I don't think they should really, but they might. I don't know. Anyway, my wife is after out of work to do. She's dig the garden, and she's to put on an extension.
Is that her hair you're talking about now?
She'll be busy. No, it sounds well, doesn't it, to say that I can't take a holiday now because I have too many expenses.
Extension.
We have the child at Eton, we have the other child at Oxford, and the daughter's becoming a nun and something else, and all that rubbish old talk, people go on with. I mean, in other words, they're just not going. They won't say it out straight. They're pretending they're going on holidays, or that they're too busy, all rubbish. You go on holidays if you want to go. If you don't go, you don't go. That's it.
But you go away every year, Tony.
I
don't
did up to about, no, I haven't been away in about 5 years.
Yeah.
I couldn't be bothered. There's some places I wouldn't be interested in going out just sitting in the sun.
Oh,
wouldn't interest me.
No.
I'd like to see some. There's no good going somewhere and the same old place every year. I get bored, I would.
Well, I think the problem is, Pat, when you're going on holidays, is that I can understand exactly what Tony is saying, because if you go to some countries at the moment, not a lot of things will be open. So if you've got a family with kids, you may not be allowed to go to the outside swimming pool that they have in certain places, or you may not be able to go to that beach. You look what happened in England. Una would probably testify as what happened in Bournemouth Pool last week, where basically it was like an absolute zoo, and they had a problem with you know, with so many people on the hottest day of the year turning up, where basically the police had to step in. Now, that was what happened then. You could also have a situation where you've got, how would I say this? You know, you go there and you're promising your kids or whatever, we'll go to here, we'll go to there, and then you find out when you get there, because you won't know until you get there, because you won't see. I mean, you might try and look at the websites, whatever, but you arrive on the doorstep of like an amusement park that may not be open, and the kids are going to be very disappointed. So you know, it's going to be very, very difficult for families to arrange different excursions and day trips, and then if you're confined to one particular town or a resort or a camping site or whatever, you know, kids will get bored very, very quickly, irrespective of whether they sit in the sun or not.
True.
And Brian, what about you? Will you be jetting off to the Costa del Sol or anywhere like that?
It's all about the uncertainty. I don't give two hoots whether I get this virus or not. If I get it, I get it. If I die tomorrow, I die tomorrow. But if I am going to get it, I'd like to get it here at home, and not in Spain, where they can't understand a word I'm saying, or you know. But it's just the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I decide in the morning I want to go somewhere, I go somewhere. But at the moment, I just have I haven't had a pint in 13 weeks, and you know something, I'm at the stage now where I don't care if I ever have one again.
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
yeah, good point.
Yeah, the advice from the government is that, from Dr. Tony Honan this morning, was not to go abroad for holidays. Yet, 100 flights took off in the last 3 days from Dublin Airport. Now, they weren't all cargo planes. So
No.
I don't know what the story is, lads.
That's
But
advice.
do you notice that Dr. Honan, or whatever his name is, up to a couple of days ago, he was telling us what to do. We have a new government 2 days, and now he's just asking us.
Yeah.
He's not telling us anymore, he's asking us.
I wonder how much of all of this was convenient in order for the government to be what's the word I'm looking for the government to be elected or selected without any hassle, without people taking to the streets to complain about democracy not being upheld. I'm just wondering.
What do you mean by? Hang on. What do you mean by a document democracy not being upheld?
Well, we didn't. I mean, whether you like them or not, the party that got the most votes were not even consulted. And
no, hang on. I'm sorry.
They weren't consulted, Chris. Nobody wanted to sit down and talk to them.
Fine, and they don't have. Hang on. Let's get this straight. We have a democratic elected government that was elected by the people of 158 TDs, and nothing. I mean, any other country, it doesn't, because Sinn Féin may have won one more seat more than anybody else, and I voted for Sinn Féin.
But we're in a democracy, Chris. One seat is one seat.
Absolutely, but they only got 25% of the vote.
But they still deserved people. They deserved for people to sit down and talk to them.
No, the people. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Now, the people did. Hang on, very clearly now, right, lads. This put this into perspective, right? Yeah. The people did not vote Sinn Féin to be elected as a government straight off. Right?
No.
And straight out, 25% voted for them, right? Of the 62% that voted, right?
Which is 16.25% of the population.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Paul. Thank you very much for helping me out here, right?
And more than Fine Gael.
Sinn Féin's biggest problem and biggest regret is that they did not run enough candidates. Right?
That's water under the bridge.
No, but that's the truth. The truth. They would have got an extra 10 or 15. Hang on, excuse me. They would have got an extra 10 and 15 seats. They would have been in a more dominant position. They burned first preference votes because they looked at what happened in the local election and they said we could lose seats here. They completely misread the mood of the people, and you've got two centrist parties in Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil with the Greens that are a democratically elected government by the people who put the politicians in the parliament, and I can't see what your problem is.
Well, my problem is, Chris, that people.
Well, hang on a minute. Una, we're just talking about, we won't get bogged down in this, we covered it before. Una, are you, oh, she's not hearing me, is she?
Pat, I'm sorry, Pat, but I just get a bit peed off, right? I know this is what God, you can do what you want after this. I get a bit peed off with people saying, Micheál Martin is not my Taoiseach. He's our Taoiseach because we elected him as Taoiseach. And another thing that gets my gripe is, well then go on the streets and change the bloody rules. He was appointed, yes. And another thing is, because he got elected maybe on a 6th countdown in Cork South Central, that makes no difference whatsoever.
Pat,
he got elected by the people.
It should make a difference.
Doesn't.
Pat,
well then change. Hang on.
Hang
on a second, Paul. If you have a problem with the proportional representation system that elects people on 6 counts, 15 counts, then change it to a different system.
Sorry, can I just interject there, lads? We were always taught with the Defence Forces, right? It's not a question of the person. You respect the office. That is the office of the Taoiseach of Ireland. Absolutely. And that office, regardless of your thoughts of the person, that office at all times comes first and foremost in your manner and in your dealing with it and your respect of that office.
Bang on, Paul. Bang on.
That is the best way. If we want to actually go out in this world and show how things are done properly, that's the first step. I don't care. I have no time for that man whatsoever. But I will completely, at all times, respect and salute and honour the office of the Taoiseach of Ireland.
Well said. Well said.
And
Mary Lou MacDonald has no right to be even considered Taoiseach if she gets one more seat more than anybody else. They got 25% of the vote.
I'm not saying that, though, Chris. I'm not saying that, Chris, and I agree with you. But surely they deserved, by virtue of the fact that they got one more vote, it may only be one more vote, but I know that from, and it's only a basic thing, if it was an Irish dancing competition and somebody got one more vote than the other, they won. And, you know, in a democratic society, Chris, even if you know, they deserved at least to be, for the other two parties, whether they hated them or not. And I am no speaker for Sinn Féin. I would never
honestly, Mary, do you actually think Sinn Féin want to go into government at this
particular
time? They are actually in the best position. They are now the official opposition of this country.
I just and I can guarantee you who voted for them.
Hang on, I voted for them. I'm glad
what has happened now has given them more power than they've ever imagined.
Absolutely.
Possible. Yeah.
They can't believe
they would never have got that. If they went into government, they would be knocked down just like every other political structure.
They can't believe their luck.
As opposition people right now, they have more structure, more power, and more influence than they could have ever dreamed of.
As a fellow Cockman, okie dokie, I know how we got on there when we were flying abroad.
That's your fault. It's your fault.
Your fault as moderator.
Your fault for comparing enough to go abroad for your holidays.
Tony has gone to his neighbour to try and get him back in.
All right, Una isn't with us either. You cannot be serious as the programme on lairmedia.tv.
Can't hear you, Una.
Info is our email on lairmedia.tv. Now we're going to press on with another topic that we set out for our consideration today. Your favourite funny film. Your favourite funny film, Stephen?
I've got 3.
Oh, you have 3? Oh, jeez.
Life of Browne.
Huh?
Young Frankenstein and Blazing.
Brilliant. Yeah.
No, those 3 films slay me, especially Young. If I had to pick one out of the 3 to be Young Frankenstein, especially for Marty Feldman.
Marty Feldman.
In it. He was absolutely fantastic in it. And
there was a lot of that films here in Ireland.
Funniest film I ever saw.
Yes, very good.
Absolutely.
What other ones did you mention?
Life of Browne, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And Blazing Saddles. And the reason I like Blazing Saddles, it's because it's so satirical. It's unreal. Absolutely unreal. It takes brilliant. Use the language out of everyone. Blacks, whites, Jews, Indians, everyone.
Mel Brooks, was it Mel Brooks? Yeah.
Mel Brooks, yeah.
And Paul, what about you? Did you pick out anything? I mean,
I found it very. I thought about it. I found it very difficult. I kind of went to approach it from the point of view of characters and people. So if I want to sit down and watch people that would actually just make me laugh from one end of the day to the other, Laurel and Hardy. Any one of their movies just gets me going. End of story. I don't care. Sit down with them with a bottle of gin, and I guarantee you the last thing you'll want is a holiday, and the first thing you'll never think about politics again as long as you live. Absolutely brilliant. The second one, my thunder was stolen. That one was Blazing Saddles. That was number 2 on my list. Again, just one of those movies that just, in every sense of the word, it takes the mickey out of everything. It's so silly in some parts. It actually makes you laugh at some things that are very sad and very real in life. It's absolutely wonderful. And last but not least, I still think, okay, it didn't set out to be a comedy per se, but I still think it's a wonderful script and very well acted. And that was The Commitments.
Oh, that's true. I'd forgotten about that. And Brian, what about you? I know one of yours anyway is...
It's the only one. I love comedy. I love all comedy, but The Life of Brian does it for me and nothing else.
The Life of Brian. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. And Mary, what about you?
As Good as It Gets, and The Nutty Professor.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. The Nutty Professor was Eddie Murphy, was it?
No. The Nutty Professor with Jerry Lewis.
Oh, the one back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
The original.
The original
the
one.
back in the 60s, is it? That was
And
good.
there,
And the other one was, well, that's fine. And the other one was what? As Good
as It Gets with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Jack Lemmon, isn't it?
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson.
And Chris, what about you?
Oh, what my all-time favorite comedy film had to be from when I saw it as a kid. It was on most Christmases, whatever. It's a mad world. It was made in 1963, where the opening scene basically sets it into its pure slapstick. Where what it is that Jimmy Durant is being chased in a car chase, and then the car.
It's a mad world. That was in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 1963, and basically what happened was
that far back?
Yeah, but it was all the big stars at the time. It was like you had like the Terry Thomas, and you had the Milton Berle, Peter Falk was in it, Columbo. They all had like bit parts in it, and the idea was that it had to go and find this big $300,000 that was under a big W somewhere, and Spencer Tracy was in it as well. He was a cop. But the opening scene kind of sets the ball rolling when there's a big car chase and the big car crash, and Jimmy Durant is lying there and he's trying to tell the people where he's dying, and he's trying to tell people where the money is. And just as he tells it and he dies, you see a bucket rolling down the side of the hill as if, okay, he had kicked the bucket, So it was just that use of like humor it was brilliant. And the show, that was where it started, and it just went on and on for about 2.5 hours. And I mean, there's not one bad scene. It's just unreal. One of the funniest films you'll ever watch.
What we're talking about, Tony, is funny films, and we've mentioned Young Frankenstein, and Laurel and Hardy, of course. What stands out? What kind of humor do you like?
Very little. You can see by my face. There's some very funny pictures made over the year. I don't know, could I pick any picture out? Mel Brooks, of course, was always funny.
Yeah.
And some of the Laurel and Hardy pictures are very funny.
Yeah.
You'd have to laugh at them, like, and in the old Keystone Cops, Harold Lloyd.
Harold Lloyd.
They were funny. They were very funny.
And Marx Brothers.
But like that, some of the old films are funny, like.
And
then there's a few modern ones, but like that, and what's his name? The airplane things with what's his name?
Oh yeah.
Or Neeson, or what's his name?
Yeah.
With the grey hair.
Yeah.
He was on the other night now in the film.
High Bridges.
No.
No, the airplane, the movie.
Oh,
and,
for God's sake.
the comedy.
Leslie
Nielsen.
Nielsen. Yeah.
He was taking off Inspector Clouseau the other night in the film, but he wasn't as funny as Peter Sellers now.
No.
Peter Sellers was very funny.
Father of the Bride was very funny.
Well, I thought there's one film he didn't mention at all, lads. I'm surprised. There was The Great Dictator.
Oh,
Charlie Chaplin. That to me was just priceless. I could watch that all night.
That's Mel Brooks as well, isn't it?
And everything you always wanted to know about sex, but was afraid to ask. Remember that one when it came out? Just sensational.
Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't really like that one.
Very funny.
No.
Time is flying, lad. So you cannot be serious as the program on learmedia.tv. Tell all your friends about us. And while Una is trying to get hooked up again in the best possible sense, I want to say hello to 3 people who contacted me, and I want to make apologies as well that I didn't mention them till now on the show. That's Bobby in Western Samoa, Aaron, fantastic guy in Australia, and Mark, my own son, over in Berlin. Thanks, guys, for sharing it around all the shows around. For
And who's the fella in Samoa?
Bobby O'Connor.
Looking for banknotes in the man.
I will do
The
that.
Tala.
You're
The
looking
Tala's
for
the
someone
local
to invest
currency.
your money,
What,
yeah?
what currency have they there?
The Tala.
All right.
No, that's Italy.
Don't contradict me with banknotes. Don't even think about it. Samoa is the country that was moved from the international dateline a few years ago. Remember that about 6 years ago? They got moved. They were sick of being behind. Now they're ahead. They got the international dateline to move the other side of the country.
They changed the international dateline.
Yeah. They were with America and they were behind us. And now they're ahead of us. They skipped the day. They're ahead of us now.
I know Australia are 11 hours ahead of us, or New Zealand are 11 hours ahead of us.
Yeah.
Because we'll be talking to someone from there soon. So I don't know how we're going, but anyway, we'll see. Anyway, we're going to move along with a topic that I contacted the man today, but I was saying before you joined us, Tony. It's a topic we touched on before, but I feel that someone should spearhead a campaign to get it completely banned, in my opinion, from all platforms, all kinds of platforms, and that is the insidious scourge in society today with the online gambling. I think it's appalling. It's on a par with cocaine and crack cocaine.
It's truly scary.
Society, you know. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, I don't know an awful lot about online gambling, but like you said, it is very, very addictive, and it's very easy to lose an awful lot of money very, very quickly. Somebody could put their wages in.
Good.
Just like that. Just like, do you remember the poker machines that used to be in pubs?
They're still there.
Yeah, they're still there. Yeah, but I mean, I saw a lad put his whole wages into one of those.
Yeah.
And it must be the same with the online gambling. It's too easy. It's really too easy, and it should be banned, definitely.
And Brian, do you think that it should be banned from all platforms?
The very fact that they put up a sign at the end of the screen saying "gamble sensibly" means that they shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
Because people don't gamble sensibly; they just don't.
Yeah, that's true.
It's very true. Yeah, and that's they should be gone. They should never have been there in the first place.
Yeah, that's true.
But
very.
That's the internet.
And Paul, what do you think? Is it time now to do something seriously about it?
I remember my first foray into the whole area of technology was in the late 70s. I don't think any of us at the time, when we started doing software development, ever expected in any way, shape or form that the technology was going to be to the level where we have nowadays, right? So that's the first thing. That technology has been wonderful in many ways, but there's also been some terrific downsides to it. And certainly the online gambling, in my opinion, is one of those downsides. I mean, let's equate it for a moment to a person who's addicted, because gambling is an addiction. So if we equate it to a person who is addicted to drugs, they might as well actually legalize and get the postman to drop the drugs in through the letterbox to the guy every day. That's what online gambling is. It's a delivery service right to you wherever you are, right? The same as if someone has an addiction to alcohol. You might as well actually open the pub in their front living room. Now, if we did that tomorrow morning, or if suddenly tomorrow morning someone said, oh, our post is going to deliver drugs, there'd be bloody uproar. But because, I don't understand this, but there doesn't seem to be the same uproar that it is so easy to bring in an addiction right into a person's house, right into their home, right into their lives. And it's not just that person, it is the lives of those around them.
Mm-hmm.
I just do not understand it.
Is it not just an extension of the bookies?
It probably
is it another step on.
Oh, it is indeed, yeah. But it's an extension that I don't believe should be allowed.
Oh no, definitely not.
No,
Definitely.
it is an extension. I think it's gone to the state they are deliberately, whether they won't admit this, but in my opinion, they are deliberately taking advantage of people who are not capable of deciding these things for themselves.
Yes.
That's my personal opinion. They're taking advantage of people who have
What revenue does the government get from it?
No percent. 0%.
Zero as far as I know,
Nothing.
yeah.
0%. There's no betting tax anymore.
So why, Chris, aren't they banning it?
No. If you're looking at pure tax revenue, that's not the way to look at it. The obscene amount of money those companies put into sponsorship and donations, all legal, mind you, in a lot of
Just
cases.
hit the nail on the head there,
That's
Pat.
where the money big
Sponsorship,
bucks
isn't it?
are. So there's nobody going to rock. Mary, what do you think it is? Should it be totally banned?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I think it's insidious. I think it's actually worse than drinking. It's worse than drinking because I've said it before. At the press of a button, you can lose your home. You can lose absolutely everything, and you're a gambler. For an alcoholic during COVID-19, they haven't been able to get as much access to alcohol as they would normally have been. And Brian, I'm not saying, but you were saying there earlier, it's so many weeks since you've actually had a pint, you don't feel like a pint now. An alcoholic who has been in the same situation has probably been, this has been an equivalent, I suppose, to drying out for them because they haven't been able to get the access that they normally would to pubs or to, yes, there's been a few off licenses open, but it's not the same thing. You don't have the same access. But with a gambler, I've often tried things like trying to convert MP4s, YouTubes into an MP4, and you're just about to do it. And suddenly an online gambling site comes up in front of you with this pretty girl telling you that you can gamble and you can make this much money and gamble sensibly and make sure that that you're over 18 and that you have the owner's permission to gamble. Yeah. It's just insidious. One press of a button, thinking maybe I'll win now today. Maybe I'll get the money back to pay for my home, and you've lost
everything.
More.
Yeah, I've seen
that statement that they put there saying, gamble sensibly, in my opinion, is absolutely ridiculous. You might be telling a drug addict to inject carefully. It's a stupid statement.
Yeah.
And
Chris, now, the first thing they should get rid of is bingo. All these sites have bingo on them. Bingo was somewhere that old women mainly could go to meet up with their friends and have a chat and do a little bit of gambling. And now they're shoving bingo down their throats on the internet.
It should be completely banned. Absolutely, and utterly.
What do you think? Do you think it's time just to ban it completely? Because it press a button on your mobile phone, that's it. You can lose $500,000 or $1 million, whatever. There's no limit.
Lose your house, which is more, and your family all in 5 minutes.
If they can ban cigarette advertising because it's bad for you, they can ban drinking ads because it's bad for you.
Exactly.
I don't see any ads out there for cocaine on television, right? So I don't see why they can't ban online gambling. I don't see why not. But that decision will not be taken because there's too much money in it from the people with the vested interest. Yeah. They know that they're in a position to take advantage of people who are not capable of making decisions.
Sure, I mean, even in William Street, all the gambling places are open until 10 and 11 at night. Well, certainly 10 o'clock.
I'll collect you. Don't worry, I'll collect you later when you're finished there.
But if the government aren't getting any revenue from it, then it should be very easy for them to come along and stop it.
I'll tell you why they don't. Well, I tell you why they won't. Okay?
Yeah.
I think Mary touched it and Stephen touched it. Someone, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, I have a little bit of personal experience on this. I think it's actually easier for me to live with an alcoholic than with a gambler.
Absolutely.
The reason being is that in my experience is that you can only drink so much.
Drink till you drop, fall asleep.
You can only spend a certain amount. You can't drink as much as you can possibly gamble. And I know that for a fact. You always will hear from a gambler how much they win. You never hear from how much they lose. Okay. And that, so if you hear of a gambler says I won 10 grand in the horses, he may have lost about 30 grand to get that 10 grand. Okay. So, I mean, that's just what happens. That's a fact of life. You'll always hear about the good stories. You will definitely never hear about the bad stories. Now, the question that was posed, okay, why won't the government stop it? Because basically betting companies are doing the government's job for them in sponsoring different sports competitions, and other things that would not, so that gives the sporting organizations money for them to invest down the like, if you take it like the World Snooker Championship is sponsored by a company. You've got other different sporting organizations that are sponsored by betting companies.
Yeah.
And what happens is that gives them the funds, and they will turn around and tell you, well, if we are not allowed to be sponsored by a betting company, where are we going to get the funds from? Because there's no money in drink, there's no money in cigarette sponsorship anymore. So gambling is the last of the vices that is allowed to
indirectly the government are
so they're being complicit by not doing anything about it.
Right.
And what happens is that, and we all know the amount of money that bookies take in, but the taxes that they pay to the state are low because of the amount of sponsorship that they give. Okay, so that's the clear point in that. Now, one thing that you make, and which is I mean, listen, when I was younger, I did do soccer bets, I did GA bets. I never racing. I never could understand. I could never understand racing, but I did bet, and I stopped maybe 15 years ago, right? And I never bet for big money. I just never did it, right? But one thing that grates me about the online betting is this: if anybody knows about betting, years ago you couldn't bet when the race was on. You know, when they say they're off, the bets are. And so if you bet maybe 20 seconds after the race, the bet's null and void. Okay. Same with a soccer match. You can't bet when the kickoff is gone. The biggest problem about online betting is this: they are allowing bets to happen while the match, the race, or the event is in progress. And I think that is the biggest scandal, because you could be sitting there. And I remember the first time I noticed it was the advertising. I was watching Man United were playing, I think, Stoke, right? And Man United were 3-up, which is on the rare occasions these days, right? But Man United were 3-up. And while Wayne Rooney had the ball in midfield, the perimeter advertising perimeter around the stadium says Man United to win 4-0 is now 6-1. And I'm going, what the hell's going on here? The guys who are looking and playing the match are looking at the hoarding and says, do you know what, lads? We could, if we tell one of the lads at half time or whatever, we'll get a few bob on at 4-0. And I think that's the biggest scourge, because fellas are sitting at the home watching the match or the race, and while they're sitting watching, they have already lost. Say, and this did make this simple, they bet 1-1 for a match. Now, as you know, 2 goals can be scored in the first 10 or 15 minutes. So now their bet is over. But what do they do now? They allow in-event betting so that the people sitting at home can now bet again on the event. On the phone, on the computer. But what they do is they're keeping the interest going by allowing the people that have already lost on that event to bet again and again and again. And that's the biggest scourge on online betting.
And at the same time, putting
Here,
up the
Chris.
sign saying,
I agree 100%.
Gamble sensibly. But I have a friend, someone very close to me actually, who's dry now 50 years. And back in the 60s and 70s, the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings just be in Cruise's hotel. And this person was telling me they were in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting after it was over in Cruise's hotel. A game of poker started. And this is back in the 60s. And at one stage there was £2,000 on the table in a poker match at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. So it just goes to show you how addiction, I mean, these people couldn't drink anymore, so what were they doing?
Gambling. And Tony Browne, do you think it's time? Obviously, if Paddy Power came in to me in the morning to Lear Media, Pat, we want to sponsor your station for £250,000 I would have to give it consideration. There's no doubt about that. But that's all I'd give it. I'm confident of that.
I don't want anybody's
But I
house
have to say now
last night.
that,
Like
first
that.
of all, I'm very friendly with a professional gambler. Right?
Yeah.
I'm very friendly with him. He's a professional gambler. He's doing that now about, I only know him about 15 years. And as long as I know him, he's a professional gambler.
Difference.
I can't say any more about him now because I'll identify him. Because
Is that
there's a
with a
few
J,
things I
no?
could tell you, right?
Huh?
But I went to the races one time with a friend of mine down to Tralee when the track was open in Tralee, and he enticed me to put €2 on a horse. I put €2 on the horse, and the horse fell. And I wanted to know, could I get my €2 with my €2? He said, the horse fell. You can't have it. But I said, I backed the horse to win. I said, I didn't back him to fall. So he says, that's the game. So he says, there you are. He gave me my €2. He said, don't ever bet again, he says, because you're a sore loser. And I said, thank you. I took my €2 off him.
That's true.
But you could easily get caught. I can see how you can get caught. But there are people out there who are professional gamblers, a lot of them. I know of about another 4, I do. I know a fella there, he will not bet on greyhounds, only on horses. And they tell you should go to the race meeting. I could tell you a lot now about this professional gambler. When I see you, I'll tell you about him.
Is he well off? Is he well off?
He seems to be.
But there's a big, but Pat, there's a massive difference between the professional gambler that Tony is talking about.
That analyzes and mathematically looks at what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, there was a guy who was with Channel 4 years ago, Jim McGrath, right? And he was definitely a professional gambler. And because he had a profit margin, right? They reckon at this time about 15 years ago, he would gamble £500,000 a year to make a profit of 50,000. But these guys know what to bet on. They bet on, they know what they're betting. They're like investment companies. These professional gamblers are like companies on the stock exchange.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're like.
Their level of analysis is completely different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've heard this fella gamble on the phone, and he frightened me. What he was doing with the phone.
Yeah.
The amounts of money he was betting on the phone. I had the guts to ask him how much he's making or how he's doing. I really hadn't the guts to ask him. But he seems to be surviving.
Now, Tony, you remind me of a story. I used tin bar in a hotel one time in Mallow. That's all I'll say. And there was a room upstairs where the high rollers used to come for a game of blackjack. And I didn't know anything about the game. I know poker, I know blackjack. But they had their own private thing going 2 or 3 nights a week. Well-known impresario from the locality. I saw him one night to lose £300,000.
Would I know this man, would I?
Oh, you would? £300,000. I was serving their drinks all night, and I was saying to myself, surely he'll get a heart attack or something before he leaves the room. He just dusts himself down and drinks on the house all around for another couple of hours. I was just, you know who I'm talking about, Tony. I can't say his name on the program, obviously. But it's astonishing. That to me, I gambled from 1973 to 1989, nothing big. But I had one big loss that year, and I almost had a seizure on television watching the game because I knew before it was over that I hadn't a hope on hell. That was bad enough, the team losing. The next worst thing was having no money to go home from Dublin and trying to find out how I get home. But anyway, I learned my lesson.
But do you think, do you think it's when you're a gambler, you're replacing one addiction for another, and it's like, say, somebody being addicted to alcohol. They give up alcohol, and suddenly they become addicted to something.
It's a completely different. It's
a completely different thing, Mary.
It's a completely different thing, Mary. Paul is right. It's a completely different thing, Mary. The reason is this, right? Is that people will gamble as a quick way of trying to get rich.
Correct.
You know, I'm just
That's
thinking
exactly
about
it,
Pat
yeah.
because Pat drank for many, many years and
No,
gave
it's
it up.
No, it's not.
And then
It's not.
suddenly he's gambling.
Don't wash me all my underwear in
No.
public.
He's telling the whole place about you.
No, he
I've never
told,
even-
he announced it. He told that
I've-
already.
I've never even done the lotto. I wouldn't do it. It would
I don't
kill
do
me
the
if I
lotto.
lost the
I don't
euro.
do the lotto. I don't even do my club lotto. I don't even do that.
Never.
I'm
I
conscious.
don't either, Chris.
Yeah, I'm conscious of the time, so we'll belt away with the thing. And just before I forget it, the wonderful genius of a man, an arranger, a lyricist, a director, a musician, both proficient on the trumpet and the trombone, amongst many of his, I suppose, achievements. Johnny Mandel. Johnny Mandel
Johnny
died
Mandel,
today, yeah, at the age of 94. Of course, he
Yeah.
was associated, you know, Tony, with MASH.
Oh, he didn't. An awful lot of the television programs, the music on television programs he did.
He did, yeah. And he, of course, he wrote that song, that famous song. Well, I know all the songs, but some of you wouldn't. The Shadow of Your Smile. Does that ring a bell?
Beautiful
for
song.
Yeah, I've heard
Shadow
it. Yeah.
of your smile. When you... I know a friend of mine had the words of that in his pocket, right? He wrote a letter to his uncle in England, and he put the words of the song in by mistake, and he kept the letter in his pocket. And his cousin rang him up to know why he sent him the words of the Shadow of Your Smile.
He wrote a song called Emily for the film as well. And of course, Suicide is Painless is his theme song with MASH that he's associated. But
I love it, yeah.
he scored a lot of films as well, like I don't know, The Lawbreakers in 1961, 1967 Point Blank. Do people remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
The original Pretty Woman in 1968, 1970 MASH, and of course one of my favorite films. We should have mentioned it earlier on. Being There with
Oh, being there,
Chancey
yeah.
Gardner, the
Yeah.
wonderful Peter Sellers, Chancey Gardner.
What age was
Did he
he?
do
What
music?
age was he now when he died? What age is
90
he
odd.
today?
Johnny Mandel, 94.
90.
90? Oh, for God's sake.
Did he do the
Caddyshack.
music for Get Smart as well, I think?
Yeah, and the music for Caddyshack. Do you remember Caddyshack?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a funny film. That was a very funny film. And The Sandpiper and Harper. He did. I was reading about him today, and just sad. And another chap passed away, lads. Did you ever see the Ocean films with George Clooney?
Ocean 11, yeah.
Ocean 11, 12, or whatever, 1911.
47.
The old lad who played the doctor in one of them, that was in that, Carl Reiner.
Yeah.
Carl Reiner, the wonderful Carl Reiner. He wrote the Dick Van Dyke Show. He gave us the Dick Van Dyke Show way back when, Carl Reiner. He was born in the Bronx. He was 98. And there's something in the waters there in the Bronx that he was born in. He created Dick Van Dyke and The Jerk. Do you remember the film The Jerk?
Oh, yeah. That's actually a very good comedy.
It is, yeah. All of Me and Oh God and a few more. But Carl Reiner, I remember in the Ocean films. Do you remember he was the old lad in the Ocean films? And Carl Reiner. But he was a very good comedian as well, you know. We're going to go around the house once more before we finish up.
Can I just
Commercial.
mention, Pat, before you go, it might be of interest to Tony. I don't know. I'm interviewing a woman. I was asked to interview her by an ex-manager of ours in Bunratty, who was the the catering manager. And her name is, and she wrote this magnificent cookery book. I don't know if it's backwards or anything, but her name is Maura O'Connell Foley. And she owned a series of restaurants in Kenmare. The Purple Heather Tea and Coffee Shop, and Packies, and a few other fish shops since 1961. But she wrote this magnificent book,
yeah.
The Wild Atlantic Kitchen, and I was sent a gift of it today by her daughter because she's coming on the show with me. I just thought you might know that restaurant in Kenmare, or you might know the family.
The only restaurant I know was run by a German on the main street on the left-hand side going down.
Yeah, oh yeah.
No, I don't. And the hotel, of course, belonged to So be careful now. Those brothers that will be on the television.
Oh yeah,
That hotel in Kinmare.
O'Connor Scartine or in Kinmare, aren't they?
Who?
O'Connor Scartine. Now there's the surname for you.
O'Connor Scartine. Scartine isn't come to Limerick.
O'Connor Scartine are the name of the family name of them.
That's a makey up name if I ever heard one now.
I'm telling you now. I used to deal with them in a professional basis.
They got that name out of a book.
But I've never seen anybody to put as much effort into a cookery book.
I hate cookery books and I hate cookery programs.
This is actually more than a cookery book. She has photographs of historical details. She has photographs of the families that lived there, the people that passed down the tradition of the actual recipes. It's all old recipes that came from families that have been passed down.
How many ways can you cook an egg and how many ways can you cook a chicken?
It's all fish that's in this, which is great.
But the fish is simple. I don't put the fish under the grill and he's done.
Yeah, but they have some amazing potato pancakes with garlic or herb butter.
Oh yeah, I hate butter on food. It's disgusting. People putting butter on food.
Spiced apple and cinnamon compote.
You catch the fish and you eat it raw.
Which just eat it. Get it over with.
Gooseberry and elderflower compote. You know, there's so many.
Compost. You get that above the bog. Compost.
Compote.
What?
Compote. Roast cod with herb crust.
Mary, before we go on, we're tight for time. Because I'm conscious I'm doing another show after this, and I want to be. Your
haircut is lovely, by the way.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you.
Did you? I hope you didn't pay for it.
I had a Turkish barber cut it for me.
You're joking me. You paid him?
No.
You actually paid him to do that?
No, a barber from Algeria.
It's a lovely job. He got a lot. It makes him 10 years younger, Tony.
Just give for banknotes from Algeria.
I will when I see him again, probably next weekend. Algeria, but commercials that stood out for you. A commercial, one each. A commercial ads that stood out down through the years. Stephen.
Hello, boys. Remember the Wonder Bread?
Hello, boys.
Anyway.
Oh, good. Busted. You're busted. Chris, what about you? Hello, girls.
Yeah, okay. The best ads, I suppose. I like the old Kerrygold ones. The one that you see at Christmas, the ESB one with Alan Hughes, a young Alan Hewson. That's a very poignant one.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you should never say hate. I think for me it has to be the one that won. Apparently, it won for many years the best ad in the world, and it was the one with the young lad standing at the side, and the elephant is passing down, and he's eating.
Oh yeah.
And he's going na 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 na, and he's showing it to the elephant, and the elephant 20 years later, the elephant grows up and he's passing, and the young lad looks to it and
that's the last Rolo, isn't it?
That's the last Rolo.
That's a good one. And Paul, what about you?
My favourite ad of all time, because here we go again, Guinness, and particularly the one with that wonderful young character who did that wonderful dance routine.
Oh, that's
you call it. That is an absolute classic. That piece of music, and that piece of music went around.
Which one is that, Paul?
Huh?
Which one?
Guinness. Do you not remember that?
Where he's waiting for his pint.
He's waiting for his pint. And he done a dance routine.
He was interviewed years later on some program.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
And that piece of music then became popular in nightclubs for a while.
It did, but there's an old jazz.
They were all waiting for their pints because they couldn't get served, Paul.
That's it. Now you have it.
Brian, what stands out for you? What an ad?
Before I say it, I'll just give you this little tidbit. 75 years ago, the first ad was on television, and it cost $9.
Oh, because.
Wow.
And 75 years later, it's a $75 billion business.
Oh, it must be beer.
No, the advertising business.
Oh, the advertising business. Oh, sorry.
But my favourite of all time was the moose loose about this goose.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great one. Tony, what about you?
Moose.
I remember an ad just beyond years ago, only on a Sunday night, just be shown. Why, I don't know. For Railbrook shots. Railbrook shot of the London look.
Yeah,
all the shots just all dance.
Oh, yeah.
Railbrook, the Railbrook shirt.
Scotland shirt. You don't.
That's one ad I remember
As a
now.
tailor, you would have loved that.
No, but I remember it was a funny ad. They were all dancing around.
The
All
one
the
that
shops.
stands out for me is and the way she might look at you.
Oh,
Sally
yeah, Sally
O'Brien.
O'Brien.
Not bad. What a great ad.
On a personal note,
Everyone knows the Sally O'Brien.
on a personal note, the show on Saturday night has to be a classic, because I've never seen Chris on point so much. Every few minutes he was getting in that little banter with Pat. It was the funniest. I sat here, and it's the only show, I have to honestly say, the only of our You Cannot Be Serious, because I have to go through it all to put in flashcards and cut the fun
And to
cut
cut
the
me
end.
out, I know.
No, to cut the stuff. I have to put in flashcards at the start and at the end, and I have to
cut me out as well.
I'll have to cut her out now, where she went up with to Tony and things like that. That'll have to be cut out, and it's finding it. It's a nightmare. But I sat and I listened to it, and all I kept saying was, "Go on, Chris, go on."
You see, it's like himself and Pat. It's like tit for tat. He'll have a go at me. I'll have a go at back. It's just it's good-natured fun. That's all it is with me and Pat.
Yeah.
It's a Claire thing, I think. It's an old Claire thing.
Well, I mean,
take the piss.
That Pat's Corkman.
Well, we don't.
He's in Clare long enough.
Umbridge, you know. I mean, I know what I'm worth, so that's fine, you know.
You're not. Hang on. Are you telling me you're being sponsored by L'Oreal now because you think you're worth it?
On that positive note, you can't get better than that. We'll come to another show, lads, and been a blast again. Thanks to Stephen Collins, Chris Price, Tony Browne, Brian HInchy, Paul Sheehan, Mary Honan, and Una for her brief guest appearance on the show. Thank you, Una. Until we meet again, good night and God bless.
Go on,